Hey, Louis.
Hey, Tom. Well, welcome to the second episode of the ICO podcast, and thanks for joining us this morning, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. No.
Absolutely.
Well, obviously we've known each other for a sort of few years. I've been following on Instagram since we met, because you did some filming for us, didn't you? For I think it was a National Enterprise Challenge competition.
That's right. Yeah. So we were filming. It was an apprentice graduate for their first graduate job, I believe. That was back in 2014 now, which seems like eons ago, which is kind of mad.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that was a kind of a very different type of filming that I'm used to now. But as we can touch upon, it was extremely beneficial. Learned lots of things, and and I got to meet yourself. So positives, eh?
and obviously, since kind of following you on Instagram, I guess the idea that is kind of portrayed about wildlife filmmaking and wildlife film photography is this like super romantic thing. And for those of you who are listening, Tom, from his Instagram, looks like he has the most incredible life. And 15-year-old me would have been super jealous of becoming a wildlife filmmaker. But so what got you into it? And how did that journey progress? How do you end up traveling the world filming animals for a living?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to kind of take it right back to, school, really. That's where the interest sort of grew. And I guess, funnily enough, I didn't actually want to become a wildlife cameraman. It was kind of a thing that fell into my lap, unfortunately, in terms of the idea. Anyway, obviously, I've had to work hard to get to where I am today, and I'm not where I want to be yet, obviously. So there's obviously many decades of growth, but the concept of this career really came second year of university. So I would have, this was like 2010, 2011, but for about a decade before that, my sole aim in life was to become an actor. That's what I wanted to get into. Acting was my life, and I was an active member of a youth theatre group for Bath. It was called Young People's Theatre, and we would often put on performances at the Theatre Royal Bath, which was just an incredible experience. And I really kind of got to grips from a really young age. I was a really shy kid, and I think going into drama, that was my way of gaining back some type of social control, I guess. I just got addicted to the activity. I met my best friends through drama. We became so tightly glued together as a pack. I consider them almost family, because we've been through so much on stage and screen and stuff. So acting really was my life. I didn't really have any other goal apart from I want to act. And it wasn't, the goal was like, never to become a famous actor. It was just to lose myself on stage and just become someone else, and explore emotions through drama. That was the aim, because I got such a kick out of it, and I felt so satisfied, and in a way it's a form of meditation, I guess, because it is an out of body experience. So that was my pure focus. So I think coming to the realization that I wanted to become, I didn't want to become an actor anymore, was actually quite a tough. About from to 18, like I said, I was doing plays year in year out, 2 or 3 big old plays a year, and then I wanted to go to drama school. And obviously, there's a little bit of stigma attached to that in terms of job security, which is kind of ironic in the position I'm in now. But I thought it was wise. I had a good chat with my parents, and I thought it was wise to go to university first. So drama was my first love. My second love was biology. Anything to do with the environment, nature, animals. That was my obsession. And from a really young age, I was watching the very early Attenboroughs for my generation anyway. Obviously, he goes right back. But life of mammals, life of birds, the private life of plants, life in the undergrowth, classics in my opinion. Planet Earth came out in 2008, which kind of blew up the whole natural history wildlife scene in terms of exposure, I think, to larger demographics. But I was kind of watch it, and there was some amazing programs as well. I believe on BBC Two, Big Cat Diary, and also shows like the Really Wild Show with Chris Packham and
sure,
and Michaela Strachan, of course, classics. So I always had that kind of early interest in wildlife film, but I didn't ever for one moment think it was going to be a career path that I was going to pursue. It was always the acting. And then I went to Bristol, University of Bristol, to do biological sciences there, which again for me I didn't realise was quite a classic route into wildlife film. That was it's just a hangover of that course essentially. I had no idea. So I guess I was lucky there. But I got a drama scholarship when I went to the University of Bristol, and it wasn't anything that I hoped it was to be. I mean, I was pretty disappointed in myself as to how my perceptions of doing drama without the same group of people that I'd been with for the past 10 years was going to be like. And that was quite a hard realization to come to terms with. I was always, I guess, the outsider because I was one of the only people that didn't do drama as their undergraduate degree. I was doing biology. So I kind of felt very much on the outside, on the periphery. Maybe that wasn't the case, but in terms of myself, I kind of felt that, and I kind of lost love with it. I kind of fell out of love with drama, and that was tough because in my head, from the ages of 8 to 18, I was like, that's what I am going to do. And then to be suddenly struck with this idea that, well, this isn't an idea, a complete reality, that this isn't for me. And now I'm doing a biological sciences degree, which is great, but it's like, okay, right, now I'm going to actually try to find, I need to find some sort of career that I can actually use all the knowledge that I've gained over the past 3 years for it to not be a waste. I mean, it was never going to be a waste, but it was always going to be a form of a backup, and in a real sense, it definitely was. So I guess that was a good decision. So I kind of had a bit of a moment in second year of university. So this is 2010, which is fine. Everyone has those moments of panic and stress and thinking, what the hell am I doing in my life? And so I kind of thought, right, well, I love telling stories. That's at my core. That's at my roots. That's what my whole upbringing has really been about in terms of extracurricular activities. How can I utilize that? So I thought, okay, telling stories, biological sciences. I thought, well, wildlife film, and it didn't take me too long to just have that epiphany moment. And I thought, that's it, wildlife film. I had no idea what it was to do with wildlife film. That took many years of progression and searching. But knowing the sector that I wanted to just get into, that was a real epiphany moment. A few months after I had that realization moment that drama wasn't going to be my career path. So okay, well, prior to that, actually, Elizabeth White, who was a producer on Frozen Planet, and I'm sure all of you, watching, have at least heard of Frozen Planet. It's an incredible BBC landmark series that came out around about 2012, I believe. And for me, it's my all-time favourite series. It is absolutely stunning, just because, well, obviously it has the polar thread that runs through, but the cinematography and the stories, the new stories they were introducing to the world there, were completely groundbreaking. I mean, the orca wave washing sequence where the orcas move as a pod together and work together as a team to wave wash the seal off the ice floe just blew me away. So to have someone come into the University of Bristol Biological Sciences building and just give a talk about how this was done and how she got into wildlife film, I was just there like that. I was just in complete awe, you know. So I thought, this is a great opportunity, because for about six months to 9 months prior to that, I knew this was kind of this was the career path that I wanted to go down. So I thought, this is a great opportunity. I was quite nervous going up to her, and I said, look, I've got no experience. I've just got interest. Can you help? And she said, well, there's an amazing course up at the University of Salford, Media City, UK, which is where a large portion of the BBC and other commissioners are. And they do a MA course in wildlife documentary production. Maybe this is for you. And I said, okay, but I've got no experience. Just to reiterate, I know nothing about filming, producing wildlife films. I come from a really heavy acting background. And she goes, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I knew nothing about film per se. Liz's background, she has a PhD, so it was very much academia. So I thought, okay, fine. In my head, kind of, getting into wildlife film, you had to be a photographer or a director of films or some type of film element in your life from a young age. But that perception was definitely broken. So that was a really uplifting moment for me, and I'll never, ever forget it. So I went to the University of Salford, did my finals, then went up to the University of Salford after. I didn't take a gap year or anything. And that course really was the best thing for me to get wildlife film. And it's a really open-ended question. It's like, how long is a piece of string? Because there is no one set route to get into it. It isn't like medicine, where you have to follow a set path and jump through hoops and get various qualifications. But with wildlife film, you can just have a DSLR camera and just start taking pictures, and then that might naturally progress into taking video. But at the heart of it, it all just stems from a common interest in animals, of course, and a love for just being outside. And I think the latter, that's the more crucial of the two points, being outside. And I kind of found that common ground with everyone pretty quick. But the Salford MA, it was good, but I wasn't taught any camera techniques, and it was very much focused on storytelling, which was great, because at the heart of every good film at least, is a good story. But it was very much focused on how to become a producer, not necessarily how to become a camera operator. But I was given the opportunity to go to Cuba, which again is incredible, an amazing country, with now an amazing friend of mine called Ivan, who used to work at a Cuban at the I'm not going to pronounce it because I won't be able to pronounce it, but it essentially film school over there. And we made a film together on adaptive radiation in Anolis lizards. And long story short, I was out there for a month or so, and it was my first proper go at making my own wildlife film. It was about 12 minutes long or so, but we built a set in the Cuban rainforest in a little shack essentially, and we were filming there for a month. I was learning, I was making tons of errors. Ivan was there to kind of help with making sure everything went smoothly, and we just had the best month ever. And as a result, the film was made with just pure love really, because Ivan and I, we just clicked, we just got on. And you can always tell when a film has been made with a lot of love and fun, as opposed to one which is kind of made with a lot of grit and resentment. It can feel quite laborious and quite slow and patchy. But for me, this was the film that I thought would be the film that defined me. And the result, that won a couple of film awards. Wow. Student film awards, which was great. And that kind of just gave me a bit of a bounce into the industry. So as a result of that, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I guess I never would have pictured that. Like you said, my view would have always been you'd have had to have gone to uni to sort of study film or photography and had a real kind of background within that and sort of cameras and making films. So I guess to hear that's just amazing that you. I mean, when you went out to Cuba, how much experience had you got actually with a camera and sort of?
Hardly any. I mean, obviously we were kind of taught the basics of camera operation. I mean, my final year of university at Bristol, I joined a media team because I thought, well, I've got to try and get some type of media experience before I go on this MA course. So I kind of learned the basics of how to operate a camera. But you can teach a monkey to press buttons, but actually crafting a shot and knowing when not to shoot, which is just as important, if not more, as to when to actually press record. That comes with time and experience. So that craft on it for yourself, and most importantly, just failing essentially, learning.
Sure.
So I had basically zero camera experience. Just go back to your initial question there. So, but obviously, you learn on the job and you learn how to edit, and just through a lot of time. I mean, the film took about a month to make. I mean, we could probably do it now in about 2.5, 3 weeks or so. But
sure.
It just takes a long time to understand where your focus points need to be essentially. So the film, it was good. I was extremely privileged to go there. I'm so in debt to Ivan to invite me over to give me that opportunity. But my first job in the industry was as a researcher for a National Geographic series called Wild Brazil, and that was tough because that was 2 weeks contract. So the thing is, with the wildlife film industry, or any sort of creative industry for TV, say, contracts are just rolling. So they can be as short as a day to 2 years. Possibly how long is a piece of string? It is just never ending. So it's quite intimidating going into that environment with zero financial stability. I came back to live at home after the MA course, and I was plunged into this professional world that I was just fascinated in, getting involved with, and this was the career path that I was now determined to get to found myself in. And I had zero experience, and I had to keep up with everyone else at their level. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely, but as a result, you learn quicker, So my initial job in those 2 weeks was to essentially set up six different shoots in the Cerrado of Brazil, and it basically involved, it was maybe a 12-hour day for about 2 weeks. Just to make sure I was hitting those deadlines. I was working alongside a BBC producer called Peter Bassett, who was a producer on Life of Birds, Life in the Undergrowth. Huge in my eyes.
Yeah.
So to work to work alongside someone of that caliber was an absolute dream. Him to see my film as well was just insane. But that 2-week contract that rolled on to six months until that series ended. But because I was inside all the time, I wasn't particularly happy in that job. I enjoyed it, and I'm grateful for that job, of course. And it gave me a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and all that good stuff. But something was definitely missing, and that was just being outside. It's just as basic as that. It's just being outside. So I thought, okay, well, I don't think an office-based job, even if it is for wildlife film, making films, not really sure that is for me. So I thought, okay, let me give editing a go. So I then became an edit assistant. So with TV, it's just about who you know. It isn't just about who you know. Like a lot of it is about who you know. So I then became an edit assistant because the editor for the series was looking for an edit assistant. I was there at the right place at the right time. So yeah, I became his edit assistant for a few months, and again, I learned some really valuable things. But again, the outdoor thing was to be outdoor. You need to be outdoors is what you need to be doing. I couldn't ignore that any longer because with going outdoors in the sense of becoming a camera operator, you are exposing yourself to less financial stability. Because the contracts are, shorter weeks. So that was a bit of a risk, but I thought, stuff it. Like, I would much rather be happy in doing a job that maybe doesn't pay as much, but it's on my own time. And then, I value time over money when I can. So that was the real crux for me. I mean, yeah, just being outside, and I'm so glad I made that decision because it's pushed me as a person, as a camera operator, of course, and I've got loads of experiences and lots of stories to tell, and just incredible memories where when perhaps I wouldn't be able to gather as many of those stories or memories as quickly had I been in an office. So yeah, but then I think I met yourself just after that edit and some more corporate based work. But I was saving up the money from those corporate shoots to essentially buy decent wildlife filming kit.
Okay. Yeah.
And after I contacted this charity called Save the Rhino, who are an incredible charity. And I said, look, your online content's good, but I think I can do it better. Which I was pitching myself. And I said, look, if you can take me out to South Africa or Kenya to one of your main conservancies where you do a lot of your rhino conservation work, I can make you films for free. I've got the kit, I've got the editing gear. All I ask for is an amazing time and also for the expenses to be paid. And they were like, great, okay, cool, come on board. So a lot of kind of leading up to where I am today was just through free work and just trying to get enough experience under my belt without getting any money for it.
Sure,
but just creating a portfolio where at least at some level in the industry, someone can go, okay, this dude's been to South Africa, Kenya. He's had experience working in fairly tough file shoot for the one show. So so I went off to South Africa and Kenya. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No. So obviously you're saying you saved up for your own kit, and I guess that was one of my main questions, because I'm sure that any kid kind of sitting out there sort of saying, I want to film wildlife for a living. How much of your own kit do you have to buy? I mean, is it a camera? Is it what does that look like to start out in the industry?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to get into filming side of things, it can be as basic as just a Canon 5D Mark III, which is what I had, which is a good DSLR camera, albeit a bit old now. Only shoots HD, with a decent fluid head tripod, a good stereo mic like an H4n Zoom, and I bought one of these actually, which is a Glidecam HD 2000. It sounds like a device from Harry Potter or something, but this essentially just allowed me to get nice stable tracking shots, which you can do much easier, smaller, lighter kit nowadays, but back then that was what I had to play with. So a decent tripod, and so I had a 24 105 millimeter zoom lens, and a Canon 100 to 400 millimeter lens as well. Zoom lenses are the way to go, as opposed to primes, which is one focal length for wildlife filming anyway. So lenses and glass, obviously, just as important as cameras. So the lens that I had with the Canon 5D Mark III, which comes with the kit, really is a 24 to 105 millimeter lens, and a long lens, of course, because I'm filming wildlife, which is 100 to. I had the 100 to 400 millimeter lens. So that was really the rudimentary camera kit that I had. I saved up for that, just bought it second hand, and yeah, I was lucky enough for the guys at Save the Rhino to believe me. And they whisked me away off to South Africa and Kenya, and it was an amazing time. And I could go on about the various things that happened there, for days on end, really. But I think it really cemented the fact that this is what I wanted, to get into. Every single day is different. There's so much change. You come back knackered. You're pushing yourself to your physical limits, and also to your mental limits as well. But that level of satisfaction, because you go through those hurdles, it's one massive challenge. There's a challenge every single day, and to come through that with decent rushes being video footage clips.
Okay, yeah, right.
Was just the most satisfying feeling that I'd ever had, and I think from those shoots, again, I had another epiphany. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Is that that complete realization of being on the back of a Land Rover going through the African bush with a camera on my shoulder, filming. I wasn't necessarily filming wildlife. I mean, there were chances obviously to film white and black rhinos, but it was me telling the stories of the rangers and of the appeal, essentially. But those moments when the sun's going down in Kenya, and all you can hear is the grazing of the various antelopes there, and the elephants coming towards the watering hole, and all those kind of really cliche African moments that you see in books and you see on TV and stuff. I was living that, and that was just such an amazing, tingling experience. And for the Kenya shoot as well, a really good friend of mine, Stephen, who's also a wildlife camera operator, I brought him along because I needed a second camera operator, and he had his own kit as well. So mates going out together and filming out in Kenya, I mean, it was just the dream, man. It was just epic on another level. But I wasn't getting paid for it. But at least I had something to my name, as well as this other film that I made. So I continued doing the corporate gigs as well, because they bring in the money as well. And then, unfortunately, I know it's really annoying to say, but again, it was the right place, the right time. Like with anything, I guess, I mean, it doesn't just apply to wildlife film. There's also parallels in any other job, or
sure, absolutely,
whatever you consider to be a dream job. There are always going to be moments where you're in the right place, the right time, at the right networking event, and you're meeting people, and they give you the opportunity. So it's exactly the same principle. And I saw an advert online for the RSPB's film units, which historically is huge in terms of making wildlife film. They made some of the earliest wildlife films, actually. And they've won Panda awards. And for those of you that don't know what a Panda is, a Panda is essentially the Oscars for the wildlife film. So if you get a Panda award, it's essentially getting an Academy Award. So I saw an advert online. They were advertising for a new camera operator, wildlife in-house camera operator. And that's huge on two levels. One, because it's the RSPB, and I knew that I would get an incredible amount of experience working for those guys. And two, working for the RSPB as their in-house in-house camera operator is quite. Let me just trying to use the right term here. It's a known role within the industry, a well-known role within the industry. Many amazing camera operators have essentially gone to the RSPB as their training ground. So to be able to be given the opportunity to follow in the footsteps of such greats as John Aitchison, who in my mind is the best wildlife topside camera operator. He's massively into birds, who a species that I believe is the most challenging of all the animal groups to film. So to be following in the steps of these types of people was just a dream coming true. So I applied for the job, I interviewed for it, and I don't think I worked as hard for that as I've done for anything else. I mean, just prepping for that, I mean, I could relay off the whole entire history of like the organisation from like now until like early days, kind of the 1800s really. So I think I worked harder for that job interview than I did for my actual final exams at Bristol. So that kind of showed how much getting that meant to me. It was in this amazing old, ironically, hunting lodge in Bedfordshire, which is where the RSPB HQ is at. And the grounds are incredible, lovely woods, and I really felt, settled there. I thought, okay, great, like this is it. This is, starting. In many ways, it was, and I was exposed to a whole different level of, camera kit, the real, pro stuff. So what I'm talking pro is for those camera guys out there, and even those that you can go in and have a look at these yourselves. But the Amira, which for me is the best wildlife filming camera out there in terms of ergonomics, lovely lenses, stills lenses. I was having to manage the kit room, having to manage the green screen studio there, and I was going off in a Land Rover Discovery around the UK, just filming British wildlife for about 2 years or so. So, I can't really complain. It was great. It was a good job, and I really learnt. Well, I started to learn my craft there. I can't say I learnt it because I'm obviously still learning, but. Just kind of being in bird hides for long periods of time, just knowing when to kind of stop recording, when to start recording, what to focus. I severely underestimated how difficult being a wildlife camera operator, filming wildlife was, because prior to that, I'd only really filmed under controlled conditions. So the Anolis film, the lizard film that I made in Cuba, we were gathering the lizards from the rainforest, putting them into the sets to get the nice tight macro shots, really, close-up shots to make the lizards look big, macro. But in many ways, I was in control of that. I was in control of the lighting and all those bits and bobs. Obviously, we put the lizards back where we found them. No lizards were harmed. And with the Rhino film as well, it was really a people film. So I was directing the rangers on the ground, and we were just getting sort of B-roll of the rhinos. It wasn't anything. We weren't getting any sort of really amazing behaviour of the rhinos. It was just rhinos eating or looking interesting in the bush. We weren't getting anything of any behavioural significance really. So to go to the RSPB and then to be thrown in at the deep end, which I'll go into in a moment, I had to come to terms with a lot of hard truths. Because it was hard. Don't get me wrong, it was hard, and it pushed me mentally more than anything I'd done prior to that. So just to give you an example, the first shoot that I went on, first proper professional wildlife shoot, I guess you could call it, I'll never ever forget it. I went to this aerodrome in Essex called Stowe Murray's Aerodrome. Amazing place, World War I aerodrome, and they've got all the UK owl species there, as well as a whole abundance of amazing British wildlife there. They've got barn owls, little owls. They've got water voles there, hares, you name it. They've got it there. Cuckoos, and I was essentially set up with the task alone. With kit that I didn't really know how to operate. I mean, I've been told by someone there, this is the button that does this. Okay, great. But when you're in the heat of the moment and it's dark and you can't find the button, you don't have that muscle memory to be able to find it because
Sure.
you don't know
Yeah.
what you're doing. So I was given the task essentially to go out and film, to try and get decent footage of 5 or 6 different species in 4 days, I think it is. Which, looking back at the time, I thought, okay, well, like, this is what people do. Looking back, was mad. And I think it was a test of sorts. And I really, if I didn't come through that experience, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So just to put you in, to put things into context. So I was in a hide from, say, 3:30 in the morning. This is British summertime, before the sun's coming up, and then breakfast at about 8, which was a boiled egg, and then filming straight through because I was panicking until about 10 in the evening, actually, because again, the sun was going down there, and I wasn't getting what I wanted. I wasn't getting the footage. I wasn't seeing the wildlife, and I was just making error after error after error after error, and I wasn't drinking, and I wasn't eating, because in that moment of panic, you forget about the basic needs of your body. I mean, I didn't have any energy, and then I was going to bed, because the accommodation was like a good 45-minute drive away. So I was getting to bed at about like 11 or so, up at about 2:30 in the morning, not getting any sleep for about four days straight, and it was mad. It was just a bonkers shoot, and I came out of that thinking, is this what I want to do? Am I having another realization moment? Is this what I want to be doing? I thought, well, yes, it is actually. Like, this is what I want to be doing, and I can't beat myself up too much about it, because I did get footage, and I did get 4 out of the 5 species. It isn't incredible stuff. It's not my best stuff, but I did get it, and I survived, and I was able to take away incredible lessons that principles that I use on every single shoot that I've done after, and that is to look after yourself. The wildlife is important, but you're more important than what you're trying to film, because if you don't look after yourself and your own mental state, your own physical state, then how the hell are you supposed to do your job? Obviously, the wildlife and the light dictates your schedule, but if you don't have the right prep in terms of food, and you don't give yourself a break mentally, kind of at lunch, say, when maybe the wildlife isn't as active as it was first thing in the morning, especially true with crepuscular species, then you are just going to burn out, fall over, and break a camera and break a leg. You aren't in park in Bristol. You could be up a mountain in Iceland, and those sorts of errors are incredibly costly if you don't look after yourself. So that shoot I'm incredibly grateful for, because that really just gave me the foundations and the principles of how to do a good shoot from every. I'll never ever forget. It was a tough experience, painful, but I don't think I would be here doing what I'm doing today without it. So grateful for it, really. So the RSPB was brilliant, and I went on many great shoots. Went up to Islay, did lots of work in Scotland, filming hen harriers, which are my favourite birds of prey, stunning birds of prey. Filming curlews up there. Went down to the lowlands of Scotland to film barnacle geese. Incredible sight there. You get about 40,000 barnacle geese, coming down from Greenland, I believe it was, or Svalbard, I forget. Going to the East Coast and filming seals at Blakeney Point, and filming knots and other waded species at Snettisham, and even going to Senegal to film turtle doves, of all things. Just these amazing places around the UK that I feel incredibly privileged, again, to be given the opportunity to go to these places, to go see these amazing wildlife spectacles. And in a way, I can go back, and I've been back in a freelance context to film these places again, so they've been incredibly useful. But so I was at the RSPB for about 2 years, and then I kind of felt it was time for me to move on. I was living in Cambridge at the time, and I was really yearning to get back to Bristol. For anyone that hasn't been to Bristol, you must go, or be into visit. It's got such a sense of community. It's just been voted Britain's happiest city, and I can understand why. There's a real sense of community there. There's loads of really amazing green spaces. It's a plethora for creativity, and that's what I was really yearning for. So I came back to Bristol, and I thought, stuff it, I'm just going to go, freelance, which was a bit of a bolshy move, because in my head I wanted to be at the RSPB for about five years. Ended up being there for 2, but I felt the time was right for me in that moment, just to commit, take a risk, which I think is really important in life, and go back to Bristol. I'm always under the impression that if you want to do anything, you should just crack on and do it. Obviously, consider the benefits and the costs, because there are always going to be benefits and costs and risks. But I would prefer to live a life knowing what the outcome of an activity was, than not. I don't want to live a life with a regret, essentially. So I thought, stuff it, I've got to be back in Bristol. I went back and I went freelance. And both my parents are teachers, were teachers, and are retired. No one in my family has done anything like this. It's always been quite a stable job. So having to figure out how to make a living in a really competitive, very financially insecure industry was difficult. But if you want to do it, then you just find a way to do it.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So what in terms of, because what I'm kind of really picking up, which seems to be very much mirroring my journey and lots of others, is, like you said, when you start out, you just make it happen, right? And there's a certain percentage that I think is true of any industry, where it's about who you know. Like you've already said, you've already kind of mentioned that, talked about it, like getting to know people, networking. But then in terms of taking that from a job, and obviously the knowledge that you gained from actually learning how to film, and then obviously becoming a freelancer and having to, assuming become self-employed and manage your own tax and expenditure and everything else. Where did you find anybody, or was it literally a case of you learnt on the go and you learnt from person to person, or on the internet, or through books, or what did that learning process look like?
Yeah, a great question. From a tax point of view, that was purely internet. And this is a shame we don't get taught about these sorts of things in school, like how to do taxes and the law. I think that these should be integral parts of the education system in the UK. But I had no idea what I was doing there. But so the internet provided me with lots of answers. I joined a camera operators union called BEC2, and they've got lots of info for taxing for camera operators, freelance creators, further. But in terms of having to find a way and how to get a job and how to get shoots under my belt and ultimately money, that was just through coffee meetings with other camera operators and producers. So so kind of finding out how to forge a career as a freelancer was really about meeting people for coffee, interviewing people, and just persisting if they weren't answering you emails and messages. And I think that's really key. A lot of people say that you're only successful in wildlife film if you're able to stick it out longer than anyone else, essentially. So because it is hard, it's competitive. People are extremely busy. People are often away abroad on shoots. But if you're able, in whatever means that you can, able to just stick it out, then an opportunity will arise, and you've just got to grab it. But coffee meetings, really meeting people, asking basic questions as to how do you make a living, and how did you do it when you first started out. was crucial, and I kind of got a common answer from everyone else, common ways of kind of, and I was able to make a bit of progress in the first quarter of that year, and then the second quarter was really when things started just to kick off. Planet Earth 2 had just come out at that point, and I'm just emailing every single producer and assistant producer, looking at the credits. That's always a good tip.
Okay.
Look at the credits. It's quite easy to find the emails of people if you search long and hard enough. So you've got to be a little bit sneaky. But I contacted every single producer. Met up with maybe about 3 out of the 8 or so. And they gave me some really worthwhile advice, and I did what they asked in terms of becoming a drone operator. If you want to be a successful camera operator nowadays, you have to have many strings to your bow. You've got to know how to fly a drone. So anyone that wants to get into wildlife film, get yourself a drone and get yourself qualified as a commercial drone pilot. It's kind of crucial nowadays. So getting those seeds of knowledge there, that was crucial, because there isn't a book that tells you how to do it per se, because everybody's path is different in wildlife film. They come from various different backgrounds. Some people have had careers in, say, banking, and have then scrapped it for wildlife film, just complete chalk and cheese industries, really. So you do meet some really fascinating people, and it's really nice and fun to hear their individual journeys and their personal stories about how they've got into the industry. And it's a lovely industry to be in. People, it's a like-minded industry, obviously, but people are very, very conscientious and kind, I think, in the wildlife film industry. And it's a lovely environment to be in. And you meet incredible people who may seem quite quiet, but they're strong as steel. You go on a shoot with some of these people, and they're some of the most physically, mentally strong people I've ever met. So it's inspiring to be around people like that. But I am, rambling now. So,
so I guess my kind of question that came, and why I really wanted to get you on the podcast is that, as you know, I was sort of big into conservation over many years. When I started my chocolate company in 2004, we gave 10% of all of our profits to animal conservation charities, starting with palm oil, because that was something that was affecting the chocolate industry and confectionery. They were using palm oil in, most of the, well, still the big companies still do. I mean, I think it's kind of getting a little bit better known. But I'd loved the idea of working with animals. My only 2 passions in life were animals and food. And I ended up, actually, my first ever job was working at a falconry centre, voluntary, for a couple of years. And like you, British conservation, but we were rehabilitating British birds that obviously been handed to us by the RSPCA as kind of specialists. So I had a real passion and love for animals. And in my earliest memories, I was home educated, and one of the only things my parents could get me to do passionately was to watch nature documentaries. And like you, I spent my childhood and my kind of education watching Sir David Attenborough and the big guys out there, and the Really Wild Show and all these sort of things. So I'd always, I guess, I'd seen, in the perspective of TV and media, this idealized kind of career of, filming animals. And then I guess I got a little bit of a clue when meeting some people in conservation, what was really going on. And I met Save the Rhinos and a bunch of other charities at different events, and we ended up donating to them and others. And I actually met Beverly and Dereck Joubert first through email, and then I actually met them in Bristol for the Panda Awards, and they were actually screening their Eye of the Leopard film, which was just like the most amazing experience. And I guess what I'm kind of alluding to is the question in my mind, because I remember asking them, well, like, what's it like? You know, what's it actually like to have this super amazing lifestyle where you go and follow a leopard for 2 years and do nothing else?
Right.
And I suppose my question is, everybody sees it as like the dream job. You know, you're kind of swanning around the world, first class on aeroplanes, and you're dropping into countries. But you know, I think that's the perspective that people think, that you kind of like drop in and you come in a motor chicane, a Land Rovers with kit, and you set up your bell tents. And so what's it really like? I mean, you know, what about it is a dream job, and what about it isn't?
Okay, so let me try and give you an example rather than talking around an example. So recent shoots where we can talk about this. So, so I went to Zambia December 2017, and I'd done a whole string of freelance jobs prior. I'd done some stuff for the Smithsonian Channel, and this was another Smithsonian Channel project. And the brief for this shoot was I was to go along with a producer director, and we were to shoot 2 50-minute observational documentaries on predator conservation and black rhino translocation. Fine. We only had a month to do that, which is a crazy amount of time to fit in to just to film that level of content and to get a decent story. There wasn't a lot of time leading up to those shoots, so the planning in place naturally wasn't going to be as scrupulous as, say, a shoot that had 10 months of planning before. So a lot of things were left unknown, and one of the things was travel, for one, how to actually get to these places. And also accommodation. And we were told that, I mean, I'd never met this producer director before. And I was told that we were to be in the same tent together for a month. Now, that for me was quite a shock. And the glamorous side of things that people see, this is the harsh reality of it. You're often with people for long periods of times in inevitably uncomfortable and tough conditions with lack of sleep for months on end, and you don't know this person. So that's difficult,
Sure, yeah.
Producer director that I was with was the nicest guy on earth, Matt. He was awesome, and we had an amazing month, but it was tough. And I think our personality types were good, which is possibly why we were picked to work but it tested me physically like I've never been tested before, and also mentally. And I've just said it exactly that about the RSPB shoot. But to date, the Zambia shoot for me, it was far from anything glamorous. Yes, I was on the back of a Land Cruiser filming, but when the exhaustion seeps in, and when that you've only got 3 hours sleep, and the next day you're up again to film because the schedule you have no control over, you've got to dig deep, and it hits you pretty quick that can I do this actually? Have I got it in me physically, and more so mentally, to get up in the morning, put on the same clothes that I've been wearing for the past 2 weeks because it's been so hot. I'm just sweating everything's dirty. Can I do this? And you're often eating food that isn't giving you great amounts of energy. It's not the nice. It can be like boil in a bag. Space food. It can be tricky. So, but the only way to get through those moments, and also, I'm not getting paid a great deal here. I'm getting paid as a second camera operator, camera assistant. So, from a financial point of view, the money isn't particularly good either. So you've got to try and search for those like moments of, is this really worth it? And yes, I got really close to amazing species, cheetahs, wild dogs, lions, black rhinos tracking out with rangers, and those are the moments that I take home. And everyone that I know always says that you really appreciate a shoot in hindsight. When you're in the moment, you don't really appreciate everything that's going on. You can have a black rhino there, literally 10 meters away, possibly closer in my case. And all you're thinking about is just getting the right shot, making sure the camera settings are ideal, making sure that you're able to get a shot, because you are aware of how rare this moment and opportunity is to grab, and you've got to get it. But once it's gone, then it's gone, and you weren't actually in that moment able to appreciate it. And I'm all a digitally constructed image. I'm essentially watching it on TV, as opposed to watching it there with my own eyes. So that's a misconception as well. Obviously, there are moments where you feel you've got enough in the camera to actually take a peek and just have a real look at what you're filming. But if it's a moment that is going to be there and gone, you don't really get a chance to take it in. And I think that's again an experience and a moment for me that I really had to learn, and you only learn that through doing it. And it's quite difficult, because then people ask you how was it being five meters from a black rhino that was about to charge and chuck you up in the air, whatever, and you go, it was good. It was good, but it didn't blow me away, because I wasn't there in the moment. I wasn't actually present. I was very much in an office state, state of mind. I was watching this through a mini TV, as opposed to really taking it in. But if I had taken it in, then maybe I wouldn't have got the shot. And at the end of the day, getting the shot is the most important thing.
I suppose in a way you're sacrificing your own enjoyment of that moment to give that moment to other people.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there are moments. So, it depends on the species. So I was filming toque macaques in Sri Lanka's old capital, Polonnaruwa, an amazing site. And the macaques are everywhere, and they're really habituated to people because the researchers go every day. So in those moments, you don't need to be looking down the camera all the time. In fact, if you were, then you would just miss everything that is going on, and you wouldn't be able to get any shots, because there's just so much going on. You've always got to be 10 or 20 paces ahead of the animal to know where you need to be to get that shot. So there are cases where you are taking it in because you're actually looking at it, but again, you're thinking from a framing point of view and a camera point of view and a position point of view, rather than just having a coconut and just chilling out with the animals and watching them go by, which does happen, but traditionally towards the end of the shoot, when you've got everything in the can. So that's a misconception for sure, that it's all dreamy on location. Being on location's tough. Again, like I said, physically tough. It's dangerous. In Zambia, we got charged by a herd of elephants. It's serious, really serious. And which may sound exciting, but in the moment, I mean, it isn't fun.
Sure.
In the moment,
it's
fun. It's really life or death. There's a lot of creepy crawlies and various other uncomfortable truths that you have to deal with. You have to deal with the heat at night. If you're, say, living in a tent in Africa, you can't get any sleep. And if you're doing night shoots in Africa, you have to sleep in the day, and you'll have a fan on you, and that's just blasting out 28-degree heat at you every day.
Yeah.
So it isn't glamorous. It really isn't glamorous, but you do get to see, in the end, some incredible things. And more importantly, you get to meet the most incredible people. And I think that, for me, is worth it, possibly more than the animals. The guides that you meet, the people that really just dedicate themselves to the front line of conservation, local guys on the ground who have nothing but are just willing to share everything. These people that really just, that you're super, super, super privileged to meet. For me, those are the real gems of a shoot. The wildlife moments, don't get me wrong, are incredible, and I've got plenty, just a whole, stack of memories, and that's incredible. But they're often appreciated, like I said, in hindsight. But in the moment, when you're having a beer at the end of a really hard filming day, and you're talking to the guides, and you're learning their, stories and journeys, whatever, those are the real moments of full appreciation, and you really feel present in those moments. And I think those are the real moments of gems. Those beautiful moments on a shoot that you really fully appreciate then and there.
Sure. So it must have, the whole experience must have really impacted your worldview. So I'm really interested from what you thought you knew about conservation to having sort of been out there and experienced it, in the front line. How's that impacted your life, like apart from your career?
Sure. So the best example of this, I mean, in terms of working with Save the Rhino, I didn't realise to what extent conservation actually was until I was out there working with the rangers on the ground. For me, rhino conservation or animal conservation, especially with quite highly, volatile species as, rhino, which are getting poached for the horn, £60,000 per kilogram the last time I checked, which is crazy. I thought the conservation before going in was about land management and about resources for farmers, human-animal conflict, not enough space for the rhinos to graze and to have various home ranges and territories. But really, it was nothing to do with that. It was more about keeping the right people on the right side. So it was really about ensuring that the rangers on the ground that were looking after the rhinos, patrolling the areas, making sure that the poachers knew that they were about, obviously, to deter them coming in to shoot the rhinos, keeping those guys happy, because at the end of the day, these guys on the ground, they could easily turn to a cut of rhino horn, and these guys, if they get a cut of that horn, they don't need to work ever again. They are rich, and their families are rich, and everything's great. And of course, that is a massive, massive temptation, especially in Kenya or whatever. So the real conservation is just about keeping the guys on the ground happy, making sure they've got decent boots, decent mozzie nets, decent tents, because they're often out for about 2 weeks at a time patrolling parks, making sure that they're paid enough, but just basic things, just making sure that the sole of your boot is intact and is fully waterproof, making sure like I said, mozzie nets, really basic things. That is conservation at that level, just keeping people on the right side so that they can then do their job properly and want to do their job continuously. And that really struck home for me. And I think coming out of that, it really made me appreciate that the conservation isn't just about giving money to an organization and then just hoping for the best. It's I'm eternally grateful to see where that money actually goes, and how basic like £20 a month can go to just changing someone's life, and making sure that this person is on the right line of conservation. And another good example, Senegal. I went there with the RSPB, and we went to a park which had just been decimated. All the trees had been taken down, all the megafauna had been eaten. The last thing they were utilizing from the land was the land itself, was the actual soil, the bare soil and the sand, and they were selling that, and it was just a wasteland. It looked a bit like how in the Lion King, after the hyenas take Rowland Scar takes where everything is just, it was pretty similar to that.
Sure.
I think that kind of hit home to me that we're not really using the planet in the right the right way. Agriculture has just completely smashed it to bits, as is the case there. And as a result, and just through constant pressure, I guess, from people, peers in the wildlife film industry. Many people are vegetarian. Many people are vegans. I'm trying to adopt a more vegetarian lifestyle, and I love cooking. I love cooking meat. I love to eat meat. However, I can't ignore the fact that it's not good for my health. It's not good for the environment. So I'm just having it maximum once a week now. I'm not the type of person that I could just go cold turkey.
Sure.
I've got to just do it gradually. So I think seeing the effects of agriculture on the environment is kind of, I think, exacerbated.
Sure, and I think
that I should become.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing, because having obviously come from a food background myself, I studied a little bit of sort of biochem and molecular food sciences and stuff, so sort of got into that side in my career. And like you, I was kind of vegetarian for quite a while. I was kind of unluckily dealt some cards, which meant I had onset rheumatoid arthritis quite early, and I struggle with a lot of plant foods. They flare up my joints and digestion and stuff. So I'm sort of I'm eating a lot more meat because of that. But I think, coming from a point of view a bit like you, in the sense that the agricultural system that we've got is so damaging. And I think, like you said, it's a really big passion of mine. I've been studying permaculture for some years now, and really getting into this idea of balancing our ecosystems again. And like you said, I think agriculture as we know it today is a terribly dangerous thing to be doing, because obviously not only are we destroying the insect populations, we're destroying the microbiome in our soil. We're devoiding our land and soils of nutrients, and even the plants that we do eat. And this is something I find quite interesting, that a lot of people will talk about plant nutrition and stuff, but those plants have to be grown in nutritionally rich soil to be nutritional themselves. So I do think this is like the challenge right now for humans, is how do we work out how to go back to a more ecologically minded agricultural system of growing plants, and if we're going to eat meat, that it's meat that is doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is, there's a couple of guys down the road from me who've got a Longhorn cattle, and the guy, it was a very, very old breed in the UK, and he's basically got it now to a point where it was on the endangered list, and now it's not, because he's bred so many of these cattle, and he's got I think 300 or 400. And obviously they're in the Shropshire Hills. He doesn't even know how many he's exactly got. They roam free. It's 100% organic, grass fed, and so I think it can be done, and sustainable agriculture can be done. But I just think more people need to sort of talk about it.
You're absolutely right, and I think a dialogue, people of our generation and the next generation, I think that dialogue will become a lot easier, because there's a lot less stigma attached to talking about the environment. It's amazing. Mates of mine who have little to zero interest in conservation and the environment, they're really making actively positive decisions in their diet based on what they've seen on social media and various documentaries on Netflix, whatever. But these are the last people in the world, in my books, that would choose to not eat meat, which is positive, and I think it's really hard to kind of fathom how are we going to do this, but I don't have the answer to that question, unfortunately. But what I do have is just an ability to make a decision every single day to maybe not eat meat. I don't need to eat meat. I can get my protein from plants. How do animals get their protein? They get their protein from plants, obviously. So I don't need to eat meat or dairy even really to have a healthy life in my book. So just making those kind of micro decisions is going to a massive positive impact on the planet. And just going back to your point, Louis, about when you're on a shoot, do you see these environmental effects on these effects of agriculture on the environment? How has that kind of changed my perception of diet and all that? But also plastic consumption. I mean, obviously that's been a really hot topic over the past year and a half, thanks to Blue Planet 2. But it isn't just happening like the past 2 years. This has been going on for decades and decades and decades. It's only until recently that it's really been exposed at that national level and really been acknowledged properly. And PMQs, I guess, fairly soon after, due to public pressure. But plastic pollution. I mean, I've not been in the industry long enough to know what an environment without plastic looks like. Every single shoot I go to, you can be in the most remote parts of wherever, and there's always a bottle of something, or there's always some type of plastic there, and it's really sad because you think that no one's been to this part of the world before, and maybe they haven't, whatever. But then you see a plastic bottle just wash up on the shore or appear in a gannet's nest or whatever, and it's sad. It really is now a really common thing to see, even in the most isolated parts of the planet. I mean, I was up in Iceland filming up in the West Fjords, filming Arctic foxes back in September last year or so, and this is the northernmost tip of Iceland, and I was up on the fjords there, and there's just a plastic bag just rolling past, and it's there are no trails as such. It's as remote as you like, and there's just this plastic bag of the local Icelandic supermarket there, and it just I guess just got carried in the wind, and it's just sad, man. It's really sad to see this. Thankfully, it didn't get in the way of the shot, so it was absolutely fine. But you are seeing it wherever I go. There's plastic, and I think that and diet are the two largest things that I think we can really make a positive decision on. And I've got rid of plastic bottles, plastic packaging in supermarkets frustrates me no end. And whenever I can, I go to someone who I can the local greengrocers, say, and I can just pick up in a paper bag, which you can't just rely on paper. We need trees as well, but for me, it's better than having it in, say, a plastic bag, of course. But just trying to make those micro decisions every day is inevitable. So yeah,
sure. And I think there's so much enablement of it now. I mean, there's so much more access, I think, than ever to local food, and being able to buy online and being able to buy direct from people, and but I think it's a challenge. But like you said, you can't save the world just on your own, but then you can be part of something greater, and making those, like you said, those small decisions to take a cotton bag with you to the supermarket and don't get a plastic bag. And, I mean, it's really nice to see that Britain has finally caught on with this no waste supermarket trend, and I really hope that begins to take off more, because I think just little things like that, it used to drive me round the bend that, running the chocolate business for as long as I did, I'd say 60% of the time, the packaging costs more than the things that were in it. And the unfortunate thing is, obviously, if you didn't have that, most consumers won't buy it because they don't want to buy a boring boxed, so it was that really difficult balance. So for us, we did what we could. We used recycled cardboard. We printed with natural dyes. We used biodegradable wrapping. So little things that you could do, and we couldn't always be 100% because sometimes a retailer would just dictate that that's the way it's got to be. I think I do hope that it's a movement that we can start to push towards, and I'm sure that wildlife film as a storyteller and a medium is going to do so much for the generations by illustrating what's really going on, because I think a lot of it is
absolutely
it's like detachment, isn't it? You know, that because you don't see this stuff. And I'd been campaigning against palm oil for many years, and it took me until 2012 to actually go to visit Malaysia to see what it was really like. And even
it's shocking.
I
just sways of it. Yeah,
I mean, we drove for 6 hours from Kuala Lumpur down to Johor Bahru, and like you see pockets of other rainforest. I mean, it's you know, a really harrowing and emotional experience to see that. But I think that thank God for the internet in a way, that we can show this stuff, right? You know, we can illustrate what's going on, and through the power of video. I mean, as you know, I spent sort of 8 months last year in Mexico, and they've got some really big conservation problems going on, because the Yucatan Peninsula, you know, a lot of people go on holiday to Playa del Carmen and Cancun and these kind of places, and they've got no sewage system. It doesn't exist in the Yucatan Peninsula. So I met a conservationist out there, a turtle conservationist, and he was saying that one of the hotels in Cancun, I think, empties something like 13,000 litres an hour in peak holiday season into the ocean of raw sewage. So yeah, it was really interesting to see, you know, in my own aspect, you know, the way that some of this was affecting the environment, and I guess, you know, let's kind of start to round off on a slightly more positive note, and I think that, you know, wildlife film and storytelling is such a powerful tool, and so I guess, like, my question is, how do you see your role in the film industry? Like, what, this is a bit of a cliche question, but, you know, where do you see yourself kind of growing in the industry? And you know, I don't know how much you can say, but maybe your sort of input on where you feel the industry might be heading.
For sure. No, absolutely. So as it stands, if I can just talk about the industry first. So just going back to that point of storytelling as a positive medium for promoting conservation, as a really good, and I've not worked on this production. I was a little bit late coming into it, unfortunately, because I just went freelance as they were starting it. But there's a Netflix series called Our Planet, which is starting imminently, and it's the guys that made Frozen Planet, Planet Earth, Blue Planet, The Hunt, a team called Silverback Films, and they've worked with David Attenborough and the WWF to make a conservation-led natural history blue chip series, which is the first of its kind. And I've not seen it. I've got friends that have been working on it, but this is exciting for me because this is what I've been wanting to see for the past 10 years. The fact that this is going to be able to reach 150 million people, and it's conservation, and also the beautiful, you know, wildlife films that we see, I think that's going to be an interesting collaboration, and hopefully a step in the right direction. So there are movements. The industry is listening to people, and, you know, listening to the environment, more importantly. So that's definitely a positive step in the right direction. As opposed to for me, I still want to pursue the line of a camera operator, long lens camera operator, topside, working mainly with birds, but also mammals. I want to really hone in on that craft as a long lens camera operator. That's what I love doing more than anything else, and I want to just pursue that for a few more years. But ultimately, I want to start making my own wildlife films, but not wildlife behavioural films, conservation films. That's my sort of 10-year projection, is just to start making my own conservation films. Once I've really understood the craft, I really have, you know, I've got decent connections. I've been to, you know, various parts of the world, seen where the issues are, and if there's a decent story in there. But I think what's more important is about telling the story in a different way. You know, like we're so used to seeing the man on the hill telling us about the history of an area, or you know, someone with a middle class accent going into a third world country and telling us about, you know, the various issues there. I don't see that as a positive, progressive way to tell conservation stories. So in the next 10 years or so, I'm going to just try and figure out my own way of, you know, telling that, and possibly it could be without a presenter at all. So yeah, that's kind of my 10-year projection, I guess. But it's really encouraging to see the wildlife film industry, based in Bristol, primarily, moving in the direction of a more conservation-focused series. That's a really, you know, progressive step. And that isn't, you know, to say that we are going to see more frozen planets and stuff, because that is actually in the making. But you know, we are going to be seeing that type of show as well, because there's a real demand for that, and it'd be silly to not listen to, you know. But a conservation-led narrative to wildlife film is essential for the sake of the environment and the planet, because, you know, kids growing up are going to be more and more used to hearing about it, and if they're, you know, if they're used to seeing it not only on, you know, Instagram and social media, but also through the films that they're, you know, digesting, then you know, it will just become normal to not block, you know, to not have plastic bags, not to choose, you know, plastic bottles over, say, you know, like a metallic bottle that, you know, you can, you know, reuse single-use, you know, plastics versus a metallic bottle, or, you know, choosing a predominantly vegetarian diet or, you know, vegan diet as opposed to meat. So the more we can normalize these sorts of things through series such as Our Planet, the more progressive the state of affairs are going to be in terms of saving this you know, planet that we all live on.
Yeah, amazing. And I think, I guess to round off the aspect of the podcast is sort of inspiration, knowledge, opportunity. That's what it's all about. So I guess that the final question is, we talked about the inspiration, you know, and how you kind of came to that through a kind of, like a lot of us do, an unconventional path. The knowledge, I guess, like you were saying, was just people to people learning, being in the field, having the experience. But then I guess the opportunity, taking that step. I just want to glean from your last few things. If there's somebody out there who's saying, I want to do this, I've been thinking about doing it my whole life, I'm taking the first few steps, I'm thinking about buying the kit. When you go from contract to contract, because I know, I mean, looking at your Instagram, you've been to some amazing places over the last sort of couple of years. How is it? Is it all down to people, or is it down to social media? Is it down to LinkedIn? You know, what does that look like, and how do you kind of build those relationships with those people to create those the contract to contract work?
I would say it comes down to the following: if you're interested in people, you're interesting to them. So my philosophy with this is, if I'm going for a coffee meeting with a producer for, say, Planet Earth 2, I'll watch a lot of what they've, you know, done. I'll tailor that email to them to make sure that they're aware that this isn't just a cookie cutter email. I'm genuinely interested in what they have done, and it would be a great opportunity to be able to find out more about what they are doing, and if there are any opportunities for me to work collaboratively with them. So I think that principle goes a long way and can be applied to lots of different, you know, contexts. But essentially, I always try to move the conversation away from me and move it onto them. Ultimately, I'm interested in them. Obviously, I want to with them on a shoot, but the only way to do that is for them to want to have a conversation with me. And the best way really to get people to engage is to listen to them, and you know, and to really understand what makes them tick, and therefore provides the right answer after, which will guarantee you will hopefully guarantee you a successful relationship going forward. So I would say with emails and emails and emails, and coming for coffee meetings with all these different producers is useful, and obviously it's good for your face to be out there, but it's just taking it to that next level and really showing people that you are interested in them. You're not just using them. You want to be a part of their journey and their series, and as a result, you can then form a connection that 10 years down the line may well be able to give you another break and another job. So it's really about forging relationships, and unfortunately in the wildlife film industry, it's better the devil you know. So people would much rather go on a shoot because like I said, in Zambia, I'm in a tent for a month with someone I don't know. That's not the ideal scenario. Obviously they want to be doing that with and they haven't killed each other. So it's obviously better the devil you know. You'd much rather go on a shoot with someone you can get on with, rather than someone who may actually be better in terms of getting the shots, but is a nightmare to deal with on location. So it's about making sure that you're interested, you're responsible, you've got a good sense of humor, and you're able to take criticism. So the most important thing, I feel, really, your most important skill is just listening to what's going on, listening to what people want from you, and just listening to other people's opinions. Because at the end of the day, if you aren't able to listen, then you really aren't going to get anywhere.
Sure. So. And I found that myself, where I think a lot of people, and you must get it, I don't know whether you're on LinkedIn, but, I get an awful lot of junk on LinkedIn and cookie cutter messages from people that you can quite clearly see they haven't put a single moment's thought into it. It's just copy, paste.
Just spam, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. And it's a shame because, probably they've got good intentions, but, a lot of the time, because they haven't put that personal touch on it, I'll respond because I try and respond to everyone, but they're not going to get the same response from me had they tailored something. And I myself do an awful lot of business through sort of social media and LinkedIn, but I'm in the habit, I make a YouTube video, I upload it onto like a private link, and then I send it to them, because I think that like a video, I think is like even more so than it's such a personalized thing to be able to send that to somebody and to show them that you've actually bothered to take the time to do it.
Absolutely. No, I can agree more. And I think at our heart, at our root, we want people to like us. I think that's just a general, human behavior, isn't it? We all want, people to like us. We want, people to get on. So if you feel as if someone is interested in you and why have they picked you, it doesn't matter what position you are. You could be a series producer for, say, Planet Earth 2, but why is this person picked my series as opposed to this other person's series? Well, you always keep that comparing. So yeah, no, absolutely. Tailor it to that person, make them feel special, and be genuinely interested in that person. As a result, you'll be an interesting person. You'll stay in the mind, and hopefully an opportunity will arise because of it.
Amazing, fantastic. And so finally, Tom, tell everyone what they can see your work in. I'd love some kind of little, so, and then what I'll do in the show notes, I'll kind of link the names below so everyone can see your amazing work. I don't get as much chance to watch TV and stuff as I used to do, as I tend to work a lot these days.
All the world, man. Yeah.
Sure. I certainly try and tune into, whenever you're doing something, done some amazing work. So yeah, please tell everyone where they can see your stuff.
So the most recent series that my work was featured on was a BBC series called BBC's Earth's Great Rivers. And that's on the iPlayer at the moment. And I shot on the third episode of that series, the Mississippi episode, and I shot a sequence on pelicans. And I've done a lot of work on the series Canada: A Year in the Wild, which is a Channel 5 series that's still up on My 5 on demand. And I've done some stuff for the Smithsonian Channel and Love Nature, which is, Love is an online TV nature channel. Essentially, I've been doing some work there, filming toad macaques and the various conservation films that I mentioned. So the rhino translocation and the predator prey conservation films. They're a little bit harder to find. I don't think those have actually come out yet. So what people need to understand is it does take a long time for these series, to be made. So even though I filmed that well over a year ago, doesn't mean that it's actually been made fully and it has actually been shown. So the Pelicans I filmed like a year and a half ago or so, and it's just about come out. There's a Sky One series that's coming up. I can't reveal the name of it yet, but if you follow me on Instagram, say the shoots I've been on, advertising the various shows that my work will be featured. So that's Tom Rowland Camera, and the next series I'm going to be involved with is really, really exciting, is the new BBC Landmark series. Again, I can't reveal the name of it, but it's the new Attenborough series, which is going to be coming out 2020. So I'm off on a shoots in a few weeks' time, and I can't wait. It's going to be good.
Wow,
so
very exciting.
Yeah, I'm tuned. Yeah,
awesome.
Be good.
So is it, have you met Attenborough yet?
You know what? I actually haven't. I just need to shake his hand and just say thank you, then I'm done. Then I can just
absolutely. Yeah. Well, what I'll do, Tom, I'll put everything in the show notes. Anything I'd like if we put some of your camera kit in the show notes as well, so people can get hold of you. I'll put all your social media and everything. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure. I have to reiterate, if anyone wants any further advice or you just want to get in touch to say hi, drop me a message on Instagram. That's how I'm kind of most active in terms of messaging nowadays. So I'll get back to you, and if you're ever in Bristol and want a coffee to meet up, or whatever, any sort of professional advice and I'm about, just let me know and I'll be happy to do so.
Okay, that's amazing, Tom. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to get you back on in the future to have a bit more of a chat about what you do and get into deep storytelling mode next time. But thanks again for joining.
Nice one, Louis. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Mate.
Bye.
See you in a bit. Cheers. Bye.